Hey, it's Crypto Bobby, and today I want to talk about some of the market movements that have happened over the course of this weekend, right now being Sunday, October 29th. Some of what really looks to be consolidation that we've seen, and in the past few hours, a really nice run for Bitcoin, as well as Ethereum, and a lot of the other altcoins or cryptocurrencies out there. And also want to talk a little bit about Bitcoin Cash making a big time move over the course of the weekend, the past few days, really making, if you have Bitcoin Cash, making a ton of money depending upon where you bought in. So right now with Bitcoin, we are looking at really just under $6,000 or so, 59.70, and over the course of the past 24 hours or so, Bitcoin was consolidating in the 5,800 range. And from what I've seen from a lot of the people in the technical analysis space and kind of the conversations I've been having, people were talking about Bitcoin getting into a little bit of a consolidation phase before making a big time move up to the SegWit 2x, B2x fork. And I talked about that a little bit in the previous video about how I thought Bitcoin would, when you looked at the run that Bitcoin made with the Bitcoin Gold fork, which has really been very much a non-event in a lot of cases. A lot of people don't even have their Bitcoin Gold yet just because it's a pretty poor planned fork, pretty poor planned implementation of any type of new cryptocurrency. So Bitcoin Gold has really been kind of a shit show a little bit. And Bitcoin SegWit 2x, B2x, while I know there's a lot of contentious debate as far as the usefulness of it, as far as the damaging effect that it could potentially have on Bitcoin and a lot of other components for B2x. Some people are looking at it as basically a dividend. Bloomberg had an article that was literally calling Bitcoin Gold and B2X as dividends and kind of dismissing both currencies, and whether or not you want to view it as a dividend or an attack on the Bitcoin core network or whatever you want to view it as. It's in a lot of cases, a lot of people are looking at it as free money to either put into Bitcoin or to put into anywhere else or to keep in B2X. But as I'm looking at this right now, I think this does, from my perspective, I still do see a run-up on Bitcoin in the near future in anticipation of this B2X fork. We haven't really seen a massive movement up, still at the levels that we were looking at prior to the Bitcoin Gold fork. So it'll be interesting to see how this ends up panning out. But in the past hour or two, it looks like Bitcoin had a little bit of a breakout, up about $150 in the past hour. Some really strong, really strong buy volume there. If we can get past $6,000 and really sustain above that, I think that'll be the number and the sign to watch. That seems like it's been a little bit of a psychological boundary there, and every time we've got above $6,000, there's been a sell-off there pretty shortly thereafter. But outside of Bitcoin too, Ethereum has made a somewhat of a nice movement back up from its of just sitting at that 300 to 297, 296, 300 range, and again had some pretty strong buy volume up all the way to 310 and is now back to 307. But for a lot of people that have been looking at Bitcoin and hoping for a move, there really hasn't been much in comparison to Bitcoin. From my standpoint, in anticipation of, I was pretty heavily weighted in Bitcoin previously, and I've taken a little bit of that weight and moved some to Ethereum. Still very heavily weighted from a portfolio perspective into Bitcoin. But looking at Ethereum in the near future, I think that it has. Still looking at it as a potential to make a run. It's really consolidated heavily in this 300 range. It's been sitting here for a while, plus or minus 10, 15, 20 bucks, but it's kind of been the level that it's sitting at. So I've accumulated a little bit more ETH in this range in anticipation of a move up. Now, outside of that too, popping over to CoinMarketCap, when we're looking at this, we can take a look at Bitcoin Cash. Now, this is going to be the big, Bitcoin Cash is really the big sustained mover that I've seen in the past couple of days, and in the past, let's say in the past week, Bitcoin Cash has gone from $340 or so all the way up at one point in time to over $500 and has sold back off to about $450 at this point in time, pretty much right at $450. But this is an interesting move from Bitcoin Cash's perspective, and I believe they're opening up some new markets here as well, and they're getting some new, some new kind of buy volume in from Korea. You could see really heavily dominated by Korea in terms of the volume coming in, over $1 billion, or not over $1 billion, close to $1 billion in 24-hour trade volume on BitHum alone, which is pretty crazy. And then the top three being Korean exchanges and volume coming in from Korea. So looks like Bitcoin Cash is getting some strong buy volume in there from Korea. This is going to be interesting to see how B2X and how the Bitcoin fork affects Bitcoin Cash, because there are, if you're on Twitter at all, there's a lot of, whether it's fake Satoshi Craig Wright, or if it's Roger Ver or whoever it is, there are a lot of people out there that are really, really moving or pumping Bitcoin Cash hard. And there is a big debate now as far as the ability to really transact with Bitcoin that I think is interesting. And I don't necessarily know if there's a right answer or a wrong answer, or who sticks to the initial white paper, Satoshi's vision, or who doesn't stick to the white paper, whatever it might be. But how Bitcoin Cash can take advantage of this, and if they really do gain mainstream adoption, is going to be interesting to see it play out. Not sure if this is really just a short-term pump or a long-term move up. If you've had Bitcoin Cash, I mean, this is a big Bitcoin Cash was really sitting in that 300 range for quite a while, for the past couple weeks or so, after a pretty concerted sell-off in the past few months. So seeing this movement up is pretty impressive. I personally don't have any Bitcoin Cash, not a huge fan in my mind, but again, whether or not you're a fan of something, or if you're not, really shouldn't affect investment decisions or where you're putting your money. So to that end, I think Bitcoin Cash is something to keep an eye on in anticipation of the Bitcoin 2x fork, because if they can portray instability there and say that they are the true Bitcoin and continue to throw a little bit of FUD Bitcoin Core's way with the B2X fork, then that'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the future as well. So that's definitely one thing to take a real big concerted look into, is Bitcoin Cash really dominating in the past couple of hours. Outside of that, Bitcoin up pretty significantly, Ethereum up pretty significantly, like we obviously spoke about. Litecoin, which typically, if you look at, what I think is oftentimes pretty interesting, is unless there's significant market news driving Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Litecoin, a lot of times they seem to trade in tandem. So Litecoin, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all up pretty much an equal amount. And then outside of that, there have been some fairly interesting moves throughout the rest of the marketplace. But hopping into one thing that I think is really interesting outside of just the overall market movements on the day, I want to talk a little bit about Electroneum. And this is something that a lot of you have asked about. I've gotten asked about Electroneum a number of times in the crypto happy hours, where we've talked about it a little bit, as well as people sending in emails and a ton of YouTube comments that I delete every single time. A ton of YouTube comments that had Electroneum referral links during the ICO and things of that nature. So Riccardo Spagni, who is one of the core developers or the core team members for Monero, commented on the Electroneum ICO, where they raised $40 million, which is pretty nuts, especially today, where things are pretty it's not easy to raise that much money as it was in June, July, August, because the ICO market has cooled down pretty substantially. So he linked to a blog post, but essentially, we could pull it up over here. But Electroneum team, they were talking initially about having basically no transaction fees. That there was a reason that there are transaction fees within cryptocurrency, and it's because of the way cryptocurrencies and transactions work, and you could basically automate scripts to flood the network with transactions if there's no transaction fees. If there are transaction fees, there's obviously there's less of an incentive, because it's going to cost you money to flood the network with crap transactions. But if there's no fees, it doesn't matter. You can just do that over and over and over again and basically ruin the network. A malicious user could ruin the network. So Riccardo Spagni, who is on the Monero team, talks a little bit about how it's funny that, you know, it took $40 million basically for Electroneum to raise the took Electroneum basically $40 million and a lot of stress testing to realize how cryptocurrency works and how a lot of things are going. And this type of thing, I think, in my opinion, I personally, again, I wasn't a big fan of the Electroneum ICO or the Electroneum project. I'm really still not. I really didn't see a big reason why. I didn't see it seemed to me that there were a lot of people that weren't super familiar with the cryptocurrency world that were just saying, oh my God, I'm going to be able to mine Electroneum on my iPhone, and that's going to make crypto so accessible to, you know, the average person, because they could flip on a button on their iPhone and then they'd be mining cryptocurrency, and, you know, they'd be able to make money. I'd be able to make money. The price of Electroneum will go up. It'll be fantastic. When you do invest in an ICO or really anything in the crypto world, there are so many people out there that are, I don't want to say bad actors, and they maybe don't, you know, the Electroneum team might be great people. I have no idea, but it seems like, you know, when you're going through this and if you're pitching zero fees and a lot of these things, and you're basically just pretty much just forking the Electroneum, or you're pretty much just forking the Monero codebase with Electroneum. It's basically a Monero fork, or they're adopting the Monero codebase. They're not writing really any, you know, they're forking on top of it. They're not writing a ton of new code. This type of thing is, I mean, it's pretty crazy in my mind that, you know, it's these companies out there are raising $40 million to use somebody else's code, to use the Monero code base, and to not have an understanding of why there are transaction fees on a network, because it helps to reduce network spam and reduces the incentive to run network spam. You know, I'm not a software engineer, and it doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. So it's pretty crazy that, you know, there are companies out there that are raising $40 million on this, and I think it goes to show that you really, 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 if you are going to invest in an ICO, you know, you want to do your due diligence on the team. Make sure that there's some level of a functioning product in place. Like, if you bought into Electroneum, and who knows, there are a lot of people that bought into Electroneum, and that might help drive the price up. I hate BitConnect. I'll be the first person to say that. It doesn't mean that BitConnect's price right now isn't in the top 8 of cryptocurrency, and it's worth $1.6 billion, because I think there are, you know, 1.6 silly people in the world that'll put money into BitConnect. Same thing with Electroneum. Electroneum could go through the roof because there are a lot of people that are referring other people there. Doesn't mean it's a good project. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a valuable project. So I think that's something that it's a really big lesson when you watch these things happen in real time, when you watch experienced people in the cryptocurrency world come out and basically say, like, this company raised $40 million to fork Monero, and they didn't even realize why there were transaction fees on the, you know, on the Monero network or on the Bitcoin network or wherever, because there are a variety of reasons for that to happen. So I think it goes to show that, you know, if you are an individual that has invested in Electroneum, or you're considering investing in Electroneum or in a lot of these other ICOs, you really, really need to do your due diligence on why you're investing in something. Are they a legitimate team? I read the white paper on Electroneum, and I was like, there's nothing here. This is just a bunch of marketing speak. There's no tech. There's no nothing. You're just talking about mining on a mobile phone. Can you show me how you mine on a mobile phone? No. It reminds me of the episode, like one of the last episodes in Silicon Valley, where Jack Barker tries to have everybody turn on their Huli phones to run the VR headset, and all the phones just start blowing up in people's hands, and then phones just start blowing up in people's pockets and stuff like that. Like, I'm not going to say that, you know, if you mine with Electroneum on your phone, that's going to happen, but who's to say that it's not going to happen? It doesn't seem like it's tested out. That's a lot of money, $40 million, to go through that process and figure things out. So I think that it's really a big lesson in my mind, as far as you need to study what you're investing in. You really need to thoroughly research, and you need to make sure that the people you're putting your money behind, because it's your hard-earned money. Like, it is absolutely your hard-earned money, and you need to make sure that the people that you're putting your trust in to produce a product or something like that are going to be able to fulfill that, or going to, you know, have the technical know-how and understanding to fulfill that. So I think that's a really important thing personally in my mind, is going forward, just studying these things before. Just because somebody sends you a referral link, or there's a referral link in a YouTube comment, or some Joe Schmo out there is telling you Electroneum is going to be the next big thing, you're going to get 50 to 100x return on investment. Do your own research, read the white paper, see if there's somebody there with technical chops, see if they actually know what they're doing, and see if there's a legitimate use case. Otherwise, I think your money's going to be flown away into the wind. So, who knows how this will pan out again. This doesn't mean Electroneum is going to fail once it hits the market. That doesn't mean that they can't innovate, but I think it's definitely pause for concern on that as well. And a note to that too, guys, guys and girls, but when I'm critical, there's, and on Twitter too, but I've been critical of certain projects. There are other projects that I've been very critical of as well. And if I'm critical of something, it's not because I hate it. It's not because I think you just need to look at things in a critical lens. And if you've invested in something and somebody else is being critical of it, take that and learn from it and look at it with a grain of salt. Like if somebody's critical of Ethereum, if somebody's critical of Bitcoin, if somebody's critical of Electroneum, like it doesn't necessarily matter. Just take that with a grain of salt. There are a lot of people if I critique a specific, there was one cryptocurrency, I don't even remember, it was the name of the one that the credit card out there that used Floyd Mayweather and DJ Khaled to promote, and there was an article in the New York Times about how the founders of that, basically there was an article, let me see if I can pull it up here, but basically there was an article about how the founders of this crypto platform have really no experience in, let's see here, what do we got? If I can pull it up. So here, it's Nathaniel Popper is the guy who wrote Digital Gold, and it's Centricard. So he wrote an article on Centricard and in the New York Times how basically two or three young guys who were running a luxury car rental business in Miami, Florida, and who were pretty much just like Instagram famous, created this ICO, this Centricard ICO, raised a ton of money, raised $30 million, had, Jamie Foxx tweeting, had, or Mayweather tweeting, had DJ Khaled tweeting, all these people tweeting. And I wrote a tweet that was like, good job exposing some of this stuff for what it is. I mean, just because you raise $30 million doesn't mean that there's a real project behind there. And not to be, hypercritical and mean that because you used to run a car rental business, you can't create a credit card company. But that makes me I'm not going to give $30 million of my money to a rental car business and a crypto ICO, or a crypto credit card are two very vastly different things. And a good businessman is a good businessman, but at the same point in time, no sane person would give those individuals $30 million. But good marketing, helps. And I went out and I critiqued it, and I agreed with Nathaniel Popper that this is pretty crazy. And there are a lot of people that are agreeing as well. Fred Wilson, who is a vastly influential venture capitalist, this piece made me want to puke. You got people like Hunter Walk, who is also worked at YouTube and Google and has his own seed stage venture fund, liking this. There are very influential people in the space. And then I made one tweet about it, and I have all these people that invested in Centricard saying that I don't like cryptocurrency, or that I need to take the crypto Bobby out of or that I need to take the crypto out of Crypto Bobby, because somebody came out and wrote an article that the founders of your company had no crypto experience and have no experience in financial services, no experience with credit cards, and probably didn't need $30 million and just did a really good job marketing with celebrities, doesn't mean that you need to go out and attack. Like if I have money in Bitcoin, I have money in Ethereum. If somebody comes and rips Ethereum and says, hey, Ethereum is inflationary and it's not going to be a good investment, and it's not there's new tech out there. I'll listen to that. You listen to it, and that's how you get better, and that's how you learn other opposing points of view. You don't learn other opposing points of view by attacking people. So that's just kind of my thought process there, is if somebody comes out and critiques something that you've invested in, learn from it and try to understand what and why that's happening. And maybe that just gives you stronger conviction in the technology that in the token that you've put your money behind. Maybe you say, oh, wow, maybe I made a bad mistake and maybe, I shouldn't use this. Then that's great too. But try to learn from things as much as possible, because there's a lot of people out there right now that just are just blindly following things and not taking opposing points of view. And that's a great way to screw yourself over in the long run. So just something to keep in mind there. And guys, outside of that, I'll link to some of these articles. I'll link to the Electroneum blog post in the comments. I'll link to the New York Times article from Nathaniel Popper as well. And then I will definitely be keeping an eye this week forward on the Bitcoin prices, on the Ethereum prices, and on really the rest of the market as well. And as I'm looking at this and as we've gone through it, Bitcoin, it pushed up against 6,000 and has sold off a little bit. We'll see if it could really sustain above, if it could break 6,000 again, sustain above that. I think that seems like that psychological barrier that we really need to break prior to that SegWit2X fork. If you guys have questions, if you're thinking something specifically in the comments, if you think I'm completely wrong about some of these ICOs and my criticisms are invalid on Electroneum or anything like that, I'd love to hear it as well. I'm trying to become a more diverse thinker in the cryptocurrency space. I'm trying to learn as much as possible, and I really suggest doing the same on your end there as well. Hopefully this video was helpful for you in terms of just recapping the market a little bit in the last 24, 48 hours, as well as talking about some of the things that are going on with Electroneum and some of the critiques that the user community is providing, or the crypto community has provided to them from their fork of Monero, and perceived lack of maybe transaction fee knowledge, things like that, as well as the article that came out about Centricard, and then just understanding from your perspective, when somebody critiques something you've invested in, take it with a grain of salt, but learn from it. Is it valid? Is it not valid? Make your own decisions, but don't just blindly attack because you got money in it. So try to think about that through. Hopefully this video is helpful for you. If you haven't been around the channel for a while before, my name is Crypto Bobby. I do daily videos on the subject of cryptocurrency, and I do crypto happy hours a few different times a week. I'll probably be doing that Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, so definitely take that time to join from there. Crypto Bobby signing out. I hope you have a good one. Peace.